Israel is approaching 2 years since October 7, and the country has changed in many ways. Some of the ways the country has changed is that those who need help, both physically and mentally, from the pain and trauma of being at war and the physical injuries that soldiers are suffering from. I wanted to speak to an organization that was tapping into this trauma and helping people all over the country. Beit Issie Shapiro provides research, care, and advocates for stronger policy for those with disabilities. Disabilities take many forms. They can be mental health services, physical rehabilitation, undergoing treatment for trauma or PTSD. 20% of any given population suffers from a disability in one way or another. Since the war broke out, Beit Issie Shapiro has offered 1,500 free hours of services, mainly in therapy. I spoke to them about what it means to treat a country in trauma, different therapies that are needed for different things, and some of the ways that we can advocate for stronger policies to make countries more accessible. I hope you enjoy. To understand a bit more about your history and what led you to where you are today and what you folks are doing, please. So if you could just start in your own words, in your own time.
I think most of my career has been 30 years actually for the defense of Israel. I served in the Air Force for 8 years, flying on Phantoms and F-16s. And then I transitioned to the Prime Minister's office in the intelligence areas of there. And I spent 22 years, a very long career there. And after 30 years, I reflected a bit on that. I said, I want to do something else. I've devoted so much of my time to the defense of Israel. Let's see if I can devote also to the social resilience, which seems to me just as important. I think, even during the war, we can see how important social resilience is. And so I took some time to learn and to understand what's happening in the social sector and where I'll fit in the best. And I've been very fortunate to be leading Beit Issie Shapiro over the past 6 years. Really an organization working to better the lives of people with disabilities and to better society at large.
So I want to understand, for those at home who are listening or watching this who may not know, talk us through exactly what Beit Issie Shapiro is exactly and who it targets and who it helps, please.
Well, Beit Issie Shapiro is a 45-year-old startup in Israel. Which really works to better the quality of life of people with disabilities, all ages, all disabilities, just to make sure that they are equal and fully engaged in their communities. And that's what we want to do. And the way we work is very unique in the fact that we're all the time in conversation with people with disabilities, with their families, with the caregivers, trying to understand what change they want to see in the world. And when we identify an area that we can feel we have a significant impact in, then we'll innovate a new solution. It could be a new service, a new technology, new knowledge, and then we'll evaluate it and research it to make sure that it's evidence-based. And when we have something that works, that we believe in, and that we can prove that it actually works, then we scale it. So as many people throughout Israel and throughout the world actually can benefit from the experience and knowledge developed here in Ra'anana, in Israel, at Beit Issie Shapiro.
Okay, so can you talk me through some of these techniques and some of these research programs that you've been working on? So I know there's the hydrotherapy aspect of things, there's the mental health aspect of things. Talk me through what those may look like, please.
So for example, hydrotherapy, I won't say that Beit Issie Shapiro invented the field of hydrotherapy, we didn't, but until Beit Issie started working on hydrotherapy, it was mainly in orthopedic wards in the hospitals as part of rehabilitation from some kind of surgery. And what Beit Issie Shapiro did is it took hydrotherapy into the community. We built the first hydrotherapy pool in Israel. It's a very special pool, 33 degrees centigrade, which really enables a very therapeutic environment. And we developed the field of hydrotherapy as a vocation in itself. So today you can come to Beit Issie Shapiro as somebody who's never dealt in therapy, and you can go through a year course, a full year course, and become a hydrotherapist, a certified hydrotherapist, recognized by the local HMOs and by the insurance companies and everybody. And you can provide hydrotherapy to people at Beit Issie Shapiro. Based on the work we've done and the courses we've developed, today there are over 150 pools throughout Israel therapeutic pools, and it's part of the basic health package that you can get. And that all started here in Ra'anana, and we've been developing the field of hydrotherapy more and more, and now we've worked and been fortunate to get certification from the Ministry of Defense, so we can now provide hydrotherapy to soldiers who've been wounded in the war now. We're very proud of being able to do that and being able to give our part in the war, helping soldiers. That's just one of the things that we're doing.
Well, yeah, I want to touch on that even more, because you said you've been there for 6 years now, but obviously the last 2 years has been a very different country, with a lot of different soldiers and former soldiers and generally everyone needing a bit of extra care and support. So what does that look like for you guys, and how are you focusing your efforts and your abilities in targeting some of the people that really need help and assistance?
So I'll say when on October 7th, we sat down, the management at Beit Issie Shapiro, we very quickly understood, like everybody did, that the priorities of the country are changing, and that we have to reassess what we're doing and see if there are new areas where we can use our expertise to help the country and to help the people of the country who are hit hardest by the war. So literally days after the war started, we opened up our facilities here, and we have a lot of different rehabilitation facilities. We opened them up, first of all, for evacuees from the north and from the south who came to Ra'anana with and without disabilities. We said, come into our doors and you can get any therapy you need completely free of charge. And we've provided over 1,500 hours of free therapy based on philanthropy to people like that, and that was a huge help. We also went into evacuee hotels, and we created very special sensory environments there. So people who have fled chaos and were living in chaos within the hotels could find a few moments of tranquility in what were called quiet rooms. And we trained people in the hotel, evacuees, to actually operate these rooms themselves, so they could attain those skills and do it like in-house on their own. And that's been very, very successful. We had special research on how the war affects families with people with disabilities. We did a lot of other things during those first months of the war. Afterwards, we realized that we have other knowledge that now we can start helping soldiers who have been wounded. And we initiated a special program together with another nonprofit called Restart, and together with the Joint, called Tech for Heroes. Beit Issie had been working for many years already on how to use off-the-shelf technologies in order to assist people with disabilities living at home so they could lead dignified, independent lives. And said, okay, now let's take that. We've been working with children and adults, all types of disabilities. Let's see how we can transfer that knowledge to help soldiers. And we've reached out to many, many soldiers since then, really changing their lives. We were called to the Soroka Hospital, for example. There was a soldier there in intensive care who, without going into details of how he was wounded, but he couldn't speak. The brain was hit very cleanly in the speech center, so he couldn't talk. And we fitted him with special communication technology that we use with people with disabilities, and we taught him how to use it. And that way he could learn how to communicate with his doctors, with his family, to ask questions. Why is he there? What's happened to him? All of that. And you have a person who's fully functional almost, but who needs some assistance. So we've done that already with several soldiers. And also what we see is that a lot of soldiers, as they leave the rehabilitation wards where they're really, really enveloped with love and care, and they come home, and that's where they kind of hit the wall of their disability. Many of these soldiers are in their mid-20s, mid-30s. A lot of them have families, and suddenly they can't take part in any of the household chores that they've been a part of, and everything falls on the partner. And they need help, and so that's where Tech for Heroes comes in, and occupational therapists will come to their home or talk to them on the phone, understand what they want to do that they can't do, and then adapt them, fit them with off-the-shelf technology. So, for example, a wounded soldier will say, I've lost most of my fingers, okay? I used to be the cook at home. I used to help out. I used to prepare food for my kids. And suddenly I can't do that anymore. And so we know that today what appliances can be operated with 1 or 2 fingers. And we buy those appliances for them. We fit the soldier with these appliances at home. And then suddenly he becomes part of the household again. And he feels that he's contributing to the household needs. Another soldier is amputated on both legs, and he can't move around the house very easily because even the prosthetics have to go off sometimes. So we made sure that his house is rewired as a smart home, and they can operate many of the appliances using Alexa. And a third example, maybe just another soldier who's amputated on one leg. Adi, his name is, and when he comes home, he takes off. He says, a lot of the work I do is at home, and I need both hands to completely free. And whenever I'm working on a countertop, then I find myself leaning with one hand on the counter, and I don't have that ability to use both hands with all their dexterity. So we found a special chair for him, like this one, except for that the backrest can also be a chest rest, so he can lean forward, and it's ergonomically designed in a way where both hands are completely free, and he can adjust the height, and it's got wheels on it, so he can very safely and easily move around the home to the different countertops and do whatever he needs to do. And what we've seen is, on the one hand, all these solutions, which are very, very simple sometimes, they enable them to return to be part of the household, but they also open their minds to think, okay, I can actually do things that I did before, I just have to find the right way to do it. And then they go about looking for solutions, sometimes with us, sometimes without us, which is the best. And then we're very proud of this, and I think a lot of the feedback we get is that, we're helping them come back to their regular life with zero bureaucracy and with a lot of love and attention and listening, which is something they also need.
Wow, that's amazing. And I love that you've highlighted specific stories and examples of how the solutions can change just one life and then by expansion, kind of just one family. How far can you take that? So how far do your products or solutions or research, how does that expand to wider society? I mean, I know that some of the notes that I have here is that your work with wounded soldiers not only supports individual recovery, which is what you are outlining, but it helps reframe societal attitudes towards disability, inclusion, and resilience. So talk me through that. What's your big picture? What does that look like on a societal scale?
So I touched a bit before on our theory of change, how we want to change the world, and that's by innovating new solutions, researching to make sure that what we do is evidence-based, and then scaling. So every project we do almost has those three parts in it. With Tech for Heroes, we innovated a new solution that's not provided by anybody else in the country. And we're doing research on it to make sure that it actually works, and we have initial results, and we're continuing to work. We've done already work with about 180 soldiers, which is a good sample group. And we have a steering committee, and on the steering committee are also members of the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Welfare and the Ministry of Health and the Joint. And the idea is to build a package, a work model, that at the end of the day, the Ministry of Defense can adopt and say, okay, this is doing a lot of good. We can see that through the data that you've provided us. We'll take that booklet that you've written on how this model exactly works, and now we're going to implement it on a national scale. So this process usually takes some time. The Ministry of Defense obviously now is overwhelmed and can't really take in a whole new project like this. So we'll continue doing it throughout the next few months, years, whatever's required. And then we'll transfer it, and I'm sure the Ministry of Health will adopt it fully and fund it fully at the end of the day. And I think, when we talk to philanthropists on helping Beit Issie and supporting us, that's one of the major points that we hear, really resonates with a lot of them, is the fact that the ROI here is significant. You're investing something, and it may look like, we're helping 500 soldiers, but at the end of the day, this model will be adopted by the Ministry of Defense, and it'll help all the wounded soldiers. And we do that in everything we do. We work a lot with early childhood. We feel that's a very important stage in life, that if you have a big effect there, then you have an effect over the whole, life cycle of a person. And everything there is also researched and then scaled and done with government, with government steering committees as part of the project.
What can you tell me about some of the work you do? We touched on it at the start, with your efforts towards mental health. Because obviously a lot of trauma and a lot of recovery is very, of course, it's very physical. We can all see loss of limbs or physical recovery or bodies that need recovery, but the adage is that you can't always see the wounds within, right? And so how does the organization work on addressing mental health needs, whether that's PTSD or anxiety or any of the things that come with trauma, especially as we hit the kind of milestone that we're hitting now, which is the 2-year mark of the war?
So that's a wonderful question and a huge issue that we're dealing with. When the war started, we called up some organizations that deal with like mental health hotlines, and we asked them, would you like some instruction, direction, if somebody with a with a disability calls you, intellectual disability or other disability, calls you up and needs some help, how to talk to them? And their answer was like, it's a good question because those people don't even call us. And we realized that there's a lot of need, but nobody's hearing the voice of people with disabilities. And when you look at all the white papers, strategic papers written on a national level on how to deal with issues of mental health, and you kind of do Control F, let's see disabilities here, you won't get any results. Nobody's addressing the issue of people with disabilities and mental health, although we know that people with disabilities have a much higher tendency to experience trauma and stress than people without disabilities, because most of them in their childhood have already experienced some level of trauma due to bullying or child abuse or things like that. So Beit Issie has really taken it upon ourselves to be the voice of those people with disabilities and to shout out the need, but we don't want to just be the voice, we want to also provide a solution. So Beit Issie Shapiro has been in the field of mental health for people with disabilities for many, many years already, but on a very small scale. And what we've shown is that it works. You can provide mental health to people with disabilities just like to anybody else if you know how to make it accessible and how to adapt the methodologies to people with disabilities. Recently, we've received now certification from the Ministry of Health to become a residency center for clinical psychologists, which means that clinical psychologists can finish their university degrees. They'll come to Beit Issie for 4 years, and they'll focus on how to provide mental health for people with disabilities, which is an amazing achievement. There's no other organization that has that capability right now. And our societal vision is that any person with a disability, if they feel stress, anxiety, depression, whatever, they'll be able to go to somebody who can provide them the health, and that person will have the skill set and will have the motivation to do it also, and to provide an appointment and start dealing with it. And also know how to differentiate, because what you see many times with a person with disabilities, and let's, for the sake of the example, not even talk about mental health. Let's talk about, you go to a doctor, you have cerebral palsy, and you go to a doctor and you say, I have a pain in my shoulder. And the first thing the doctor will think, subconsciously even, is that, okay, that's due to the cerebral palsy, you can't, to the CP, not to anything else. The same thing happens to a psychologist. If somebody will come with a disability with symptoms of depression, they'll say, okay, he's probably depressed because of the disability. But no, that's not the issue. A person with a disability is a person with a disability. He can be depressed, he can be without depression, and you have to deal with depression as depression, just like with anybody else. And we want to be able to provide that high quality level of service, not only at Beit Issie, but throughout all of Israel. And that's why we're working on this with the Ministry of Health.
No, amazing. Are there any numbers you can share with us today about how many people are impacted by these challenges, or how many people have to undergo some of the guidance to kind of overcome some of these things? What can you tell me about the numbers?
So the general statistic about people with disabilities is that they're 20% of the population. It's true globally. Okay, that's all disabilities, all age groups. Obviously in Israel now there's a spike due to the thousands and thousands of soldiers who have been wounded. And we'll also need a lot of assistance because they're just the beginning of dealing with that for the rest of their lives. So that's a general statistic. Beit Issie, through all our different scaling efforts, we impact over 500,000 people a year. A lot of that is through legislation. There are over 15 laws and regulations that Beit Issie has initiated and led through the Knesset that have a very, very wide effect on society. At the end of the day, legislation is the way to get the biggest...
And, oh, sorry, I believe you cut out there a bit, Ahmir.
No, it's okay.
Oh, okay, great, sorry. What's the, you touched on it just now about the laws being passed. What's the, what's Israel's response to the rise in people, the rise of a nation with people living with disabilities after something like a war or a traumatic event? How is Israel, as a country, how has it responded to this rise? How would you grade it? Is there anything good, bad? What would you say has been the country's response to this kind of change?
Well, I'll answer that first of all as a father to 2 soldiers. Okay, so I think the army has really changed ever since I was there in the way they're dealing with it, and I can tell you that my son, after the war, after his part in the war. His whole group of soldiers together, like the Band of Brothers, went through a whole series of meetings with psychologists and talked it through. And I think the Army is very aware of PTSD and very aware that early intervention is important, and they're trying to do that. I'm sure that will lower the numbers compared to statistics of other wars, and I think an amazing effort is being put into there. The country as a whole, I think there's a huge lack in professionals. I think that's on a global level, but in Israel now in particular. And I think the civil sector has really risen to this challenge and trying to find ways to provide more care for more people, to do work group, to do whatever is needed, to provide more hours of service, whatever can be done, to figure out new methodologies. And in general, I think you see over the past 2 years, the civil sector has been very, very significant, and Beit Issie is trying to do its best as part of that as well.
No,
amazing society. We have an amazing civil society and amazing population, and everybody's trying to do their part.
I certainly see that where I am in my day job when I report on the high tech industry, and I see the private sector and how it fills some of the gaps that individuals identify, and that's one of the biggest access points, or one of the biggest kind of circle loops that I see are the soldiers coming out of the army in different units or different areas, and that's how they found companies, and because they want to create the solutions that they see for things that are lacking. And it's wonderful to see it in physical challenges and mental challenges and disabilities and trauma. What do you guys have lined up? Is there anything on the horizon for you folks? Any form of any other partnerships? Any other research available?
We're always doing new research and new things, and not everything is related to the war and to soldiers. I think just one more note on soldiers is that we want to open up our mental health facilities also for soldiers, and that's in the process now of approval, so we can really increase our capacity in that area and lend a hand where it's really needed. One of our major successes right now is that we have reinvented early intervention for children with disabilities. In Israel, there's what's called an early intervention center. It's for children from 6 months to 3 years old, where the families can bring their child with a serious disability every day from the morning until the afternoon, and in the center they receive all the therapies they need in an educational and social environment, and environment that's very supportive of the family meaning the parents, of course, but also the siblings and the grandparents. Beit Issie built the first such center about 40 years ago. Then we legislated. There's in Israel in the year 2000 passed the law of early intervention, and based on that law and the model development developed at Beit Issie, there are 180 centers like that throughout Israel now, providing services to thousands and thousands of people. Israel is the only country in the world that has such a service, so we can be very proud of that. And it started here in Ra'anana. What we just did, though, is we said, okay, it's not good enough. We need something better than that. So we tore down the building. We built a new one with inclusion in mind. And we said that if children start growing up at 6 months old together, with and without disabilities, if we don't separate them, we're not going to have to talk about inclusion in the future. And that's our nonprofit naive vision for society. I think we're allowed to have one as a nonprofit. We're supposed to have one. And we just opened on September 1st at full capacity. We have today 80 children at our center, 40 with typical development, and another 40, almost 44 with developmental issues. And we're creating a new pedagogy on how to do that, because it's not very simple. There are a lot of challenges along the way. And of course, we're doing this with a lot of research involved, with government offices involved, in order for this to become the new gold standard of early intervention in Israel, but also abroad, because we want to have as much impact as we can.
Wow, that's amazing. Ahmir, thank you so much. We are running out of a bit of the time that we have here today, but I do want to end with a couple of questions for somewhat of a quick fire round. This new thing that I'm trying with all of my guests. I like to put them on the spot right at the end. So I have a few questions here lined up for you, and answer them in as few words as possible.
Okay.
So, well, this is the first one. What's the one word you would use to describe Israel right now?
Unfortunately, divided.
What's the biggest misconception people have about living with a disability?
That it's a disability. Okay, they don't see the power that people actually have and the strengths that have. I heard Derek speaking on another one of your podcasts about neurodiversity, and I think he said the same thing. At the end, we have to look at the ability and not at the disability. And there are a lot of disabilities, a lot of abilities that these people have.
Yeah, definitely. That was a very well-received episode, and I'll link it at the bottom for anyone who may have missed it on the feed. It was a great conversation with Derek.
It was.
Really wonderful. One thing Israel is doing right in inclusion, in its inclusion space.
I think there's a lot of focus. I know there's a lot of focus. There's a new law also out on social welfare for people with disabilities, and there's a lot of effort now being put into closing down institutions and moving people into the communities. Everybody knows it has to be done. It's a very expensive endeavor, and Israel's taken that on. And we have to be proud of that as a society.
What's one thing that Israel needs to do to improve?
In general, on everything.
Maybe keep it in space then.
But I think in the field of disabilities, I think we need a national strategy to look at all parts of inclusion, education, transportation, businesses, everything, and have this transgovernmental strategy that says, okay, this is what we want to do. This is our multi-year plan. Many nations have that. Israel doesn't have that yet, and we should have that.
What gives you hope during these challenging times?
The people of Israel.
If you could change one policy tomorrow to improve accessibility in Israel, what would it be?
I think the accessibility of services, there's a lot of focus on physical accessibility. There's not enough focus on service accessibility and how to provide the right service for each type of disability. That's something we have to take care of. We're very involved in that right now as an organization in providing training for service providers on how to provide better service. Can I give another sentence on that just as well? We did a lot of research now, for example, on medical accessibility for women with and without disabilities. There's a huge disparity. We're just putting out research on that now. And that's, for example, an area where all women should have equal access to medical care, to women's health.
All right, Ahmir, I have one last question for you before I let you go. What are the best ways for people to follow you and get involved and connect with you guys?
Well, first of all, go to our website. It's a wonderful website, a lot of information. You can volunteer at Beit Issie Shapiro. Just register. We'll contact you and volunteer here. And of course, any support that anybody can give in any way is always received with a lot of love and thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll make sure to put all links and all contact things right at the bottom, or the side, or however it works now on Riverside, because I'm using this new platform. So we'll see. I'll make it accessible to everyone who wants to get involved. Ahmir, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, James. It's been a pleasure and an honor.